Check, check, check. Oh, I think I fixed it. All right, there we go. Should I be able to have?
Are we on?
I think so.
Can everyone?
We
be
want to
heard?
start over.
Hello, are we here? Are we on? Hello,
Are we in?
hot mic.
Whoa. Hot mic, hot mic. Oh, noise. Okay.
Noise.
Hey, you know what? I'm not doing it this way. Play the intro again.
Wait,
play the
wait,
intro
hold on.
again.
They said,
Punch
is there
it
noise
right
or is there mic? Can people hear us now? Is it fixed?
People hear
That's
us?
all.
Yeah.
All right,
Yes,
Eric.
we got a lot of yes. All right. Do that intro again. I can't do it without it.
All right, let's do it.
We are ready! What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Living Force. I am one of your hosts, Eric Eilerson, and joining me tonight to delve into the vile depths of the dark side of the Force are the doctors themselves. We have Master of All Tech, Dr. Corey Hilton.
Yeah, hello. It turns out when you get really, really intoxicated for a Patreon show and change all the settings, everything goes to hell. Who would have imagined?
Who would have thunk? And we're going to tell you all about that in just a little bit if you missed it. But first, we have to introduce Dr. Charles Henkel. Hey, buddy.
Hey, y'all. I was super tempted to just start moving my mouth and not making any sounds to mess with Corey some more, but he's stressed out enough.
He's worked enough. The entire website is refreshing as we speak. Hey, Wes Jenkins is also here. Hello.
What's going on, everybody? It's probably partly my fault. I said I was going to move some of this tech over to me, but I didn't do any of that this weekend. So still, it's Corey's fault. Way to go, man.
Yeah. But you know what is all of our
Appreciate
fault
that.
is creating this show. And it's your fault for showing up and watching and or listening. And we thank you for it. We're happy to see everyone in the chat, including the very special birthday boy, Jose. Happy birthday, my friend. Jose, or Joxy, as y'all may know him, is celebrating a birthday today, and he's decided to spend some of his treasured 24 hours of birthdayness with us. Results may vary. I can't promise anything. I think it'll be
Happy
good,
birthday,
but,
man. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Jose.
Yeah. Yes way, Jose. Sorry to bring you back to middle school there.
Yeah.
But before we get into the topic of tonight's show, which again is talking about some of our favorite dark side powers, which we did start to do last week and realized, hold on, we need content. We can make a whole show out of this. I wanted to talk about an event that we hosted on Friday night, or rather, I want Corey to talk about an event we hosted Friday night. How'd it go?
Oh man, I had a lot of fun. So I finally read I Jedi to our lovely patrons. We had a really good time. It's been a running joke at Utini for the longest time how much I am not a fan of I Jedi. So we made a drinking game out of it, and I had way too much to drink, and it was a lot of fun. And yes, I Jedi is just as bad as I remember. The alcohol did not help. So yeah, it was a blast. I think it's one of the most successful sort of behind the scenes Patreon events that we've ever done. It was so much fun. We had a ton of people in the chat. It was a blast. Like, what did you guys think? I mean, I certainly have different memories of it than you have, Eric. So
I have not laughed that hard and that continuously in a while. And honestly, like, I like to support everything we do, and I think we put out a lot of good fun stuff. I was riveted for the entire 2 hours of you sitting and reading the whole thing. And if you are on Patreon, I believe the video is accessible
should
to
be.
all
It might
patron
be.
levels. It should be.
I did make sure I hit it from the general public pretty well. So if you have trouble getting to it, let me know.
Yeah. But I think one of the coolest things too was realizing one, just how much everyone kind of needed to blow off some steam. And it was a real fun way to just kind of join in something with a lot of good heart behind it, make a lot of crazy fun jokes. And for you patrons or people that are thinking of becoming patrons later on in the year, it is an event that we will seek to, if not duplicate exactly, it will definitely influence our future Patreon content because, as you said, Corey, I think it was very successful. I think it was a lot of fun. So keep your eyes peeled for more events like that in the future. Charles West, what did you think about Corey and his pool hat specifically?
Oh my God.
I don't know why we're asking the one person who can't remember the event to tell us their thoughts on it first. It was great. You know, it was great. It really kept me on the edge of my seat. A lot of tension. Like, is Corey going to die? Isn't he going to die? I don't know. It was
Oh
good
my
fun.
God.
He was, there were a lot of instances, probably one or two sentences would go by. He's like, that deserves a shot. So that happened 4 or 5 times within 30 minutes. And we were like, man, that's 45 minutes in. Corey has put back 7 shots. Let's see how this rounds out in 30 minutes.
I am proud to say that I can certainly hold my liquor much more than I thought I could. So it was pretty fun. It was good. And Caitlin didn't have to hold my hair as I vomited on it. That didn't have to happen. It was great.
That was good. She was willing, though. We got to
That
give
was
Caitlin
right.
props.
She did say you were a loud puker.
She did indeed.
So keep your eyes peeled as we go forward on Patreon. Again, we want to communicate with you guys as to what you want to see from us. But if you want to see us get a little intoxicated more often and read some of our favorite Star Wars books, there are worse fates I can think of.
That's true.
Another thing we want to announce now is some pretty amazing news that came out last week about the High Republic books, which I have here seated to my left, your right, my left, your right, exactly, because that's how cameras work. Debuting at number 1 on the New York Best Sellers list was Light of the Jedi by Charles Soule, and number 2 on the New York Times best-selling children's books list was A Test of Courage by Justina Ireland. And oh my God, this was huge, guys! Like,
Yeah.
The books are being, I don't know if you guys have followed like a bunch of chats. The books are sold out everywhere. Like, I've had people at Twitter trying to ask, like, how do I get a copy of A Test of Courage? Like,
Yeah,
that's
totally
amazing.
There's a couple
It's
folks on
true.
our team that have Heather still hasn't gotten Light of the Jedi. I don't
haven't
think.
gotten
Has she?
mine.
What?
I haven't gotten my Test of Courage yet. It
Wow.
it got lost in the mail supposedly, and a replacement
God.
is supposedly on the way, allegedly. But it is not shipped yet, allegedly. So who knows?
Wow. Oh, and also adding to the little bit of excitement here, Spice Den says in our chat, Light of the Jedi was number 2 of all books on Amazon, right behind the first Bridgerton book.
Wow.
Wow.
Which
Dang.
obviously is a very big deal now because of Netflix. So Star Wars is dead, guys. I'm sorry to say. No one
Oh,
actually
man.
but this was amazing because I don't know if you guys had this reaction when you saw this news, but I feel like I forget that normal people read Star Wars books now. Like, people that aren't watching podcasts and aren't always on Twitter, like, people buy these books.
They do. Yeah, like it all got kicked off like back in the day with Timothy Zahn. Like his books made New York Times bestseller list every single time. Like, I wonder how many Star Wars books have done that. It's probably fairly significant.
Jared has a list. We'll have to ask him.
Oh
in the
yeah,
chat.
that's right. He does have a
the
list.
list.
That's right. We forgot he
Yep,
talked about
I believe
that.
it is 7, if I remember
Yeah.
correctly, that have hit number 1, and that doesn't mean debuted at number 1 either necessarily. But just to have, I don't want to move off of this because that's the news. It's great, but I wanted to just emphasize a new era with characters no one has ever heard of from a first-time Star Wars novelist hit number 1 on the New York Times in its first week of release.
Yeah.
Like, if that doesn't show you the hype for this new era, how excited people are. And I think more so, I just want to let people know, if you feel like the negativity of certain communities in Star Wars about like, oh, it's not the old Republic, it's not KOTOR, who cares? This is mathematical proof that people care.
Absolutely.
That the larger majority loves this and can't wait.
Yes. And the content is so freaking good. Like,
It's preem,
for
yo.
real. I clipped out a like 3 minutes of the audiobook that I've been listening to yesterday. No spoilers, but there is a scene in the book where like there's some pirates doing some drugs or something like that, and like Mark Thompson's performance and the music and the sound effects, it's just over the top. Like, it was so unbelievably good. It might be like the best 3 minutes I've ever listened to in any audiobook ever. Like, it felt like such a full production. Like, man, the content is so good. Like, it's really, really good. And we have the as the highest rated adult novel ever at UTini. So like, we all loved it.
Yeah, so well deserved. And a gentle reminder, 2 weeks from tonight, we'll be starting our part 1 of the Light of the Jedi Roundtable. We are going to extend that. I think we've decided officially into a 3-part roundtable, purely because there's so much to talk about. It's all brand new, and we want to give it the time it deserves. So make sure you hang over here 2 weeks from now to get that going. All right. Speaking of our Patreon earlier, we wanted to thank a bunch of new patrons we got this week, including Sherry Asari, James Carson, Gene Bada, Mike Mankoff, Diana Coderjoy, Dearborn. Diana Coderjoy Dearborn is one word. There was a space in the outline. Thank you all. Thanks for joining the Patreon family. Again, it is because of again, donations in kind like yours that let us do all the extra content we love, that let us make sure that we keep our equipment up to date, make sure we keep our servers running, so we can make sure to keep all these resources that you love and that you use going. You know, I think that's something we talk about a whole lot, that the Patreon money is the reason the website runs.
It is.
So thank you for that. And we have set a date now for our Phantom Menace film commentary the 4 of us will be doing. It is later in the month. We set a date, and I didn't write what it was, but it is set. It is set. We picked a night. How it's going to work, the 4 of us are going to watch Phantom Menace together. We're going to just record our reactions with, like, you know, just any kind of director audio commentary, and then we'll release that for our patrons so you can download it and play it anytime you want to watch Phantom Menace with us. So that's that from the Patreon world. Corey, would you please talk about my favorite segment of the week?
Absolutely. It's also one of my favorite segments of the week, and this is the patron of the week. So every single week we try to highlight somebody from our Patreon community. If you haven't checked that out already, we have a lot of really cool extra content in addition to Living Force. You also get this show early. And every week we try to highlight somebody in our community because they're super awesome. They hang out with us all the time, and we love doing it. So Wes, if you want to go ahead and throw that up on the screen.
Well, hello there. I'm Rob Neese, also known as L Rob on Discord, and I'm from Oakville, Ontario, Canada. It was my honor to be asked to appear as Patron of the Week on this episode of The Living Force, so here I am in my Rebel Command Center, the home office. I'm pretty sure my gateway drug to become a lifelong Star Wars fan were the Kenner action figures, which might explain why I still collect them in the classic 3 3/4 inch scale. My earliest memories of the film isn't actually all that positive, as I clearly remember screaming in terror and running up the stairs away from the TV room whenever Return of the Jedi got to Vader's unmasking scene when we played it on VHS. I guess it was too much for my 5-year-old brain to handle. From such traumatic beginnings, though, grew a lifelong admiration for the curious alchemy of humor, pathos, and high adventure that is the thread that binds the franchise. I can even remember the dark times before the release of Heir to the Empire, when West End Games RPG modules and sourcebooks were my primary source for added lore and depth to the galaxy. Shout out to Trev, aka Darth Obscurus. He knows what I'm talking about. My favorite Star Wars story is a fascinating question to think about. I think for me it has to be Brian Daley's series of short novels called The Han Solo Adventures, which were among the first novels published set in a galaxy far, far away, apart from the film novelizations. And as an adolescent, they really reflected the kind of freebooting, devil-may-care but with a conscience attitude that has made Han such an enduring and endearing character to many. Utini is actually the first thing I ever became a patron of, and I've got to say it was a great decision, as the depth and breadth of content waiting for you just behind a modest monthly contribution is truly staggering. Thanks to Discord, I've gotten to know a fair few Utini team members personally, and it really is my pleasure to support their passion and creativity. One thing I would ask the hosts is a what-if question. Namely, if Star Wars didn't exist, what do you think would be your biggest fandom and why? It can be pop culture, music, sports, whatever, but what would you be using to fill that void you wouldn't even know existed? Well, that's all from my cold suburban corner of the Outer Rim for now. Steady on, friends, and as always, be mindful of the living force.
Oh, man. Good stuff. That was awesome. Thanks, Rob. Rob's been around for forever. Love your story. Love the editing of these videos too. Like, y'all keep doing great stuff and make us realize we got to edit a little more.
I want to shout out the RPG source books for a minute because we should. Have you guys ever handled one of these before? Have you guys seen them?
Absolutely not.
Yes. No. we need to get Trevor to find us some copies, and then we need to have an entire episode just about the Star Wars RPG source books, because those came well before any novels, before anything, and it was just like imagine for a minute, we have the films and that's it. There's no Wikipedia, there's nothing, right? There's just the films. And the source books came out, officially sponsored by Lucasfilm source books. And it was like they handed the fans Wikipedia. I mean, they named species that had been seen on screen. Like, they brought so much lore to the fandom. Like, it's really staggering is a good word for it. You used in your video is like, it truly was like the first Wikipedia. Like, it's so cool to like try to relive those moments of learning what the Cantina aliens were for the first time and that kind of stuff, because none of that was explained in the films, right? So now we're like super spoiled because we have Wikipedia, which just all the information's on it. So, but yeah, there's a lot of history in those books, and that would be fun to discuss, I think.
I'd love that. And I think, you think about the kids that were bringing those to school in their backpacks and like putting them down on the lunch table and being like, oh, and you know what a muftak is? Look at this. And they're just getting all excited about, like, because they knew a person they could share that with, you know what I mean?
Right.
And now we have this whole community. Absolutely love it. Rob, thank you for digging up that part of awesome Star Wars history. As to your question, I want to open this up to all of us, guys. If we didn't have Star Wars, what would we essentially be obsessed with? Now, I know we all have other interests. That's kind of one of the things that I actually like about us, that we love Star Wars, but we're also people that like a lot of stuff. I know, Corey, you have an addictive personality. I think we can say that.
I have so many freaking hobbies. It's kind of ridiculous. Like, I don't do anything Charles, you asked me last week, like, you asked me if I'd do anything at less than 117%. And I don't think so, man. I really don't. As far as like fandoms, like specific fandoms, I would probably be a little more into comics, I believe. Like, I've recently dived into that. Me and Caitlin are actually going through a Marvel rewatch right now.
Those are fun.
Yeah, so like I saw Captain Marvel for the first time yesterday. I don't know how I hadn't gotten around to watching that yet, but
yeah.
That universe is super fun. Like, you introduced me to Marvel Unlimited this year, Eric, and I've been really diving into a lot of those. Digital comics has been fun, and that's an enormous universe. Way more complicated and convoluted than Star Wars, too. Let me tell you that. Like, people get irritated about the whole canon versus legends thing. It's like, there are 9 Spider-Verses. It's like, what the hell? It's like, how do you keep any of that straight?
That's a good one. Charles, Wes, what about you guys?
Charles, go ahead.
I honestly, I don't know if there's another fandom that could like fully capture my mind the way that Star Wars does. I love other properties, like I love the Lord of the Rings, but it almost gets like too heavy for me sometimes. Like, sure. I honestly, I might just spiral even further into my hole of fandom that is the Miami Heat. I would probably endlessly just watch NBA games. Like, instead of Team Pass for Miami, I would have League Pass, and I would just sit in front of the TV. I would buy a recliner. Like, I would go way too hard into that.
Love that. Wes?
So I'm kind of already in it, and I've lived it my entire life. It's not really I guess it would be a fandom. I don't know. I'm a big pro wrestling nerd. Big pro wrestling nerd. Ever since I was a little kid, my dad and I would watch it every day or every Monday, and then turns out every Thursday, then every Saturday. Then I go to my friends' houses on Sundays to watch the pay-per-view. So I would be super big into that. And I got sound clips already on my thing. Like, all of that. I love it. I still watch it. My friends ask me questions. My buddies ask me questions. My buddies ask me questions, and I got all the answers. So, New World Order. Let's do it.
That's one, nice job being prepped. 2, way to flex that you had a friend that could afford pay-per-view. You're cool.
He couldn't afford anything. He had that magic box that my parents didn't know about.
Oh, yeah.
That's how it works.
One quick story. If you turned it on to channel 99 and cable, and Goldberg came out and his sparks flew up in his face, the channel would go amazingly to the actual picture for a good 10 to 15 seconds. And I waited in my parents' room for about 3 hours just to see that one 15-second part. It was great.
That's awesome. God,
That's
what
fantastic.
a time. What a time we had. I'm going to actually say this, honestly, the same thing as you, Corey. It would be Marvel for me. Back when I was in college, I got into Marvel Comics like right after Iron Man came out, right? Iron Man came out in 2008.
Oh, yeah.
I entered college 2009. So I started reading all the comics, and I had trays and trays, shelves and shelves of comics, and then I got into Image Comics, DC, and I would buy probably around $25 to $30 of weekly comics.
Wow.
When
That's awesome.
at my peak,
Ooh.
I was going to the comic book stores. I had subscriptions. I had long boxes, all into it. And this was before Force Awakens came out, which is what brought me back to Star Wars. So if Star Wars hadn't stopped that, I guess I definitely would have kept going that way.
Yeah.
And I fell off of the weekly comic stuff because I realized I was spending $30 a week
It's expensive hobby
on,
for sure.
on comics. So I pulled back, but yeah, those universes, I loved those. I mean, Daredevil was my guy, number one. I read all that stuff. I like Corey, like with your Star Wars books, I found a giant Marvel Comics torrent when I was in college.
Oh yeah.
And just loaded onto an iPad and just
Nice.
read hundreds
Nice.
and hundreds. So
I think I would.
Great
I think I
question.
would. I think I would probably choose DC Comics over Marvel. Funny enough, like
hey,
Like-
some people are right and some people are wrong. It's whatever. You can, no, kidding. Hold on, keep listening.
I think I'd be a Dark Horse guy more than I would DK or DC or Marvel, but whatever.
Yeah, it's fine, man. Read Boom or you're dead to me.
I'm like
Anyway,
a big fan of Sonic the Hedgehog myself. I don't...
only the comics though. But yeah, great question though, Rob. I think that there's one of the coolest things about nowadays is that whatever you're into, you can find hundreds, if not thousands, of people that are also into that thing. So continue to love what you love and rock out your own personal fandoms, y'all.
and
All
small shout out to the Brian Daly books too. Those are pretty
Oh,
good,
yeah.
cool throwback in there also, which
Love
Lando
those.
referenced in the Solo film, which is sick.
Yeah.
Which is crazy, and those were in Utini book boxes back in the day, if we
Back in the
remember
day.
correctly.
That's correct.
All right, now for this week's Star Wars Weekly Roundup, we do not have a new reference book for you just yet. Hopefully, you're backlogging some of those we've talked about the last few weeks. But I did want to take just a second to highlight A Test of Courage, because this High Republic novel, middle grade reading novel, is not one that we'll do a full roundtable on. There is a full review up both on the YouTube channel and on the website, so definitely check those out. But I just wanted to accentuate this on the video show, because I know some people still find that middle grade novels aren't necessarily something you want to try, may not be something you ever wanted to pick up. And I just want to say, this is definitely a key part of the High Republic story. Now, as we've said in previous shows, you're not going to miss out on like plot points and not understand future books if you don't read this. That's not how they work. They want to just accentuate the story. But if you want a story that involves some really cool, fun young characters, a bunch of like young Jedi that when the adults aren't around, how do you survive? How do you learn to deal with grief as a young person? I think are all very realistic lessons. And also they recanonized the light whip. So, I mean,
Yeah.
come on.
That's sick.
It's pretty quick. It's a pretty quick read. And one thing I wanted to show here, speaking of light whip, is that there are some amazing illustrations in this book. Look at that.
Sick.
Look at that artwork. Like it's not a picture book by any means, but there are just a couple really nice illustrations that can show you more characters, kind of guide you along the journey. So if you can find it, which again is so awesome that that's a problem. Justina Ireland's A Test of Courage is out now from all booksellers, and some of the characters will be featured in Justina Ireland's, I believe, oh gosh, it's not the dark, Out of the Light. Her next YA novel, I've forgotten now. That is the next YA novel in the High Republic. You're going to get their backstories right in this book. So definitely check that out. And another thing I wanted to talk about, we had some news. I want to bring the boys back here with me if I could. We talked about Lucasfilm Games recently, guys. And we're like, oh, that's probably like mobile games and more Star Wars things. And then they're like, hey, guess what? Two big announcements happened this week. Number one, Bethesda, who did Skyrim, Wolfenstein, etc., are going to be making a new Indiana Jones game. And Lucasfilm Games is going to be making, also with Ubisoft of Assassin's Creed fame, an open world Star Wars game. Which I think we've been asking for forever.
Yeah.
Like,
yes.
these are huge announcements. What did you guys think when you heard about these?
I still don't believe it. I still don't believe there's going to be an open world Star Wars game.
It's gonna get scrapped.
Yeah. There's a
1313 hit us too hard.
there's a video on YouTube that shows the map size of certain open world games, and I forgot which. I mean, it's like a 3-minute long video, and it gives like 2 or 3 seconds on a map size of how big certain games are. and
Mhm.
it goes like the biggest is one of them is World of Warcraft, but I don't know how they are going to satisfy every Star Wars fan with. Not, you can't satisfy every Star
I
Wars
would say,
fan.
Wes, you silly summer
But-
child, you can't satisfy Star Wars fans. What are
An
you
open
thinking?
world Star Wars game where you can go anywhere at any time. I don't believe. I have to see it to believe it.
Yeah.
I have to see
I
it
do
to
too.
believe it.
That's open galaxy, right? That's not
Yeah,
open world.
exactly.
That's right.
Well, that's the question, isn't it? Because are we talking like a Cyberpunk 27, Witcher 3 type open world RPGs, which are all one continent, one
Right.
city,
Mhm.
which are huge, and even can you imagine Coruscant, Cyberpunk 2077 sized, where you can just go all over the place? That's amazing. Or are we talking like Mass Effect, Dragon Age, where it's like
Right.
multiple realms, multiple planets?
It's just
Yeah, I don't
Tatooine.
know. Just Tatooine. I mean, it's like the KOTOR games. Like those
Uh-huh.
were relatively open world. I mean, you can kind of go wherever you want, but it is still sort of steamrolled. So I don't really know what that looks like. What does truly open world look like? I don't really know in Star Wars.
Right.
Jedi Fallen Order, that was kind of open world. I'm not really sure. So hard to say. I'm kind of with you, Wes. Like I'll believe it when I see
Yeah.
it. Also, it's not being produced by EA, which still feels
Yeah.
strange.
Yeah.
Like we thought we were trapped in that that contract for a while, and
Yeah.
it seems that they're not somehow. So how the hell did that happen? Is there some controversy associated with that? I mean,
Well,
they
actually,
pay
I
a
did
bunch of
read an-
money.
Yeah, I did read an article, and they said money. I think cures everything. So I think I think that there's the very big possibility that we could get a product that is going to be more expansive than we thought. And I'm glad they're using top tier studios.
Yeah.
Mhm.
What
I
do
know
what do you think the odds of it being a game that's outside of mainstream canon is? Like High
Like outside
Republic,
of
for example.
Skywalkers?
Yeah,
Okay,
like
okay.
like High Republic, like something completely new. Like the old Republic MMO, right? Like all of that is new. All the temples are new. The way people act is new. Like I don't know how
I
is
don't
this,
think
or is it
they'll
gonna
do
be
that.
or is it gonna be Fallen Order? Are we gonna be killing Empire? Like what's it gonna be like?
30%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's gonna be most likely stuff that is as appealing to the most people possible.
Yeah, you got to have
that's
some
probably true.
familiarity to it.
Yeah, and we don't want it to be like too much, like too specific, right? Because if it falls flat on its face, they're not going to make another one.
That's
So
right.
And I think the thing with open world games too, is that because Jedi Fallen Order, it's canon, right? Obviously, we got that new logo is so good. Fallen Order is canon because you're still only playing as Cal. You can customize to an extent, but like his canon lightsaber is still blue. His canon costume is this. But with open world games, I mean, your character, you're changing outfits, you're upgrading gear. Like, I think they're gonna really play with canon here. And John Dutch Vander in the chat does ask, are we still getting Fallen Order 2? Yes, we are. That is confirmed, and that's really why I think this was such a big deal.
Mhm.
They announced we are getting Fallen Order 2, but we're also bringing in Bethesda. We're bringing in Ubisoft. It's starting to feel more like LucasArts vibe
Yeah,
of like
the
we
old
have
days,
multiple
man.
branches. Yeah, and the Skywalker Saga Lego game is still coming out. Like, I think they're bringing in multiple studios to work on multiple games simultaneously to get a more constant flow of Star Wars projects. And I'm frankly just so stoked to finally have paid time off at my job
Real.
so I can play all these things.
So you have an open world concept like Cyberpunk 2077, but with cantinas and various shops. Basically, you could have a Galaxy's Edge, but you have it 5,127 times on Coruscant.
Yeah.
It just keeps going down. All those different levels.
But obviously, it's gonna be a while before we hear anything about this game. Either one
Yeah.
of them, frankly.
It'll be 23 probably. I would be surprised if we get something that we're not expecting before like 2023, which seems like that's when our next film is going to be. Like, we got plenty of time.
Yeah.
I'm fine with
Hey,
that.
you know what I'm gonna say? That's still it will be within the presidential term. There
That's
you
true.
go.
That's
It's
true.
not that long. We'll be fine. But now, if you want to, of course, keep up with all our news, stay tuned. Every week, we'll bring you the latest Star Wars news on the Star Wars Weekly Roundup. And if you want to buy some books, make sure to head over to utini.com. There's affiliate links to everything you could possibly want, including every new release on our new release schedule, starting with Into the Dark by Claudia Gray, which I have over here, which is, of course, coming out February 2nd. Charles, before we jump into our dark side talks, can we do just maybe one, let's do a couple book reviews here. Maybe one. Maybe two.
Maybe
to
one,
you.
maybe two.
Your segment.
I think we're going to go ahead and kick this off by doing a review from Rob Neese. That might sound familiar. He's our patron of the week. And he reviewed Light of the Jedi by Charles Soule. Surprise, surprise. He gave it 5 stars and says, "We are all the Republic." Not going to lie, this one is a little bit long. Here we go. Charles Soule first came to prominence as a comics writer, including some Star Wars titles such as the extremely well-received Star Wars Darth Vader Dark Lord of the Sith series, but as proved by his excellent The Oracle Year prose novels are equally within his wheelhouse. As the lead-off adult novel of Lucasfilm's High Republic publishing initiative, he had a lot of responsibility with this one, both to the readers and his fellow Project Luminous authors, and he delivered in a major way. The characters, quirky, well-defined, and memorable. The settings, mostly original and well-developed. The action sequences, thrilling. The daring. But what I most wanted to talk about in this review is the point on which most tales from a galaxy far, far away live or die. The villains. Enter the Nile. These Mad Max-looking lunatics are the depraved flip side of the Galactic Republic. Reavers, killers, pirates, and wholesale hedonists who exist in the metaphorical shadows cast by initiatives like the Republic's Starlight Beacon space station in the Outer Rim, meant to bring unity, progress, and fellow feeling among the more rugged planets of that area of space. Their leaders are just reflections of this canny wantonness. They seek not to rule the galaxy, but to prey upon it at their whim. At least almost all of them. I don't want to get too much into Marky and Rowe for fear of spoiling what he's all about, but trust me when I say that Soule has added a wholly original, unpredictable, and downright fiendish big bad into the canon, which at this point cannot be an easy feat. I can't wait to see what he does with the character next and what his actions and their repercussions will mean for characters throughout the High Republic books to come. And thankfully, at the end, I'm going to read this too. There's a too long, didn't read version, and it says, "A fantastic space opera in conversation with Star Wars we know and love, but boldly telling original stories, and I have a feeling the best is yet to come." Wow. Thank you, Rob Neese. You provided your own mini review that supplements Eric's quite well over on utini.com. Let's see.
Absolutely.
Wes, you want to hit up this Cad Bane review?
Sure. Speaking of Cad Bane, here's your Black Series
What
Cad
the-
Bane right here.
Sick.
Hey!
Cad Bane, Light of the Jedi by Charles Soule also gives it 5 stars. Stunning first novel in the High Republic era. Soule has exceeded all my expectations of his first Star Wars novel, grabbing the reader's attention from the word go. He takes you on a thrillingly journey through a time never explored before, through the eyes of a host of new characters who can't help but become attached to from the moment they're introduced. Soule delivers rich world building, exciting new characters, and the ability to take your emotions on a wild ride. There's everything to love about Light of the Jedi! Exclamation point. Awesome. Thank you, Cad Bane. I'm glad both Cad Bane and Rob Neese didn't spoil it for me because I have much to read, ladies and gentlemen. Not much to read. I have about 2/3 left, but anyways, great reviews.
I cannot wait to talk about this.
Yeah, really well done. I will say before we go to our little merch ad here, Charles, you said last week you were going to finish the book after the show. You did. Can you give our audience a little sneak peek into what you'll be saying in 2 weeks on the roundtable?
2 thumbs up. 2 thumbs up.
Great.
That's all I got for now.
This is also audio. All right, great.
Tune into the roundtable is what I have to say. I'm not going to spoil it now, but guys, I have written more pages of prompts for this book than any other in the history of Utini, and that's saying something. So we're going to have a whole lot to talk about and break down. Can't wait.
Also can't wait. All right, speaking of that, we got a great merch ad to show you guys. I think that features some art about Light of the Jedi. Let's throw that up, and then we're going to talk all about the dark side of the Force. Oh, is that it? There's no... All right, there we go. Another wonderful design from the birthday boy himself, Joxy. A reminder, if you use HIGH20, that's HIGH 20 at checkout, you get $14.99 for that great disaster tee. All right, last week, my guys, my friends, my compatriots, we talked about the Jedi and how they have evolved from Luke Skywalker barely be able to lift his lightsaber out of the snow to pulling Star Destroyers from orbit and walking through dreams. Now, this week, I want to talk to you guys about the dark side of the Force. So, to start off this conversation, when we first saw the dark side, first thing we ever saw, Vader choking people, right? I think that was number one. As a kid, what did you think when that started to happen? When Vader just reached out, crushed that little windpipe in that meeting in New Hope?
I wish I could do that too. That's exactly what I thought.
I just heard so much about you, Wes.
All right, that's a little concerning.
All right. So other than that,
I
like,
don't
this
I don't have any memory of that's like too far back. I can't remember what it was like to see that for the first time.
That's the problem, right? Like my earliest memory is watching the VHSs, and my earliest memory is watching Empire. So I don't know what the heck I was thinking when I was watching A New Hope.
All right. So let's be a lesson to all of you that are going to start a podcast someday. Always remember to deny the prompt. That really helps stimulate the conversation.
Yes, and is
A
that better?
plus. No. So I'll put it this way then. In Return of the Jedi, when Palpatine uses Force Lightning for the first time, I feel like that ups the game pretty significantly as far as the dark side goes. Because up until then, we saw Vader move stuff with his mind. We saw Luke move stuff with his mind. We saw Vader sense Luke. We saw Luke sense Vader. Like, it was pretty even, right? And then once Palpatine shot lightning out of his hands, I feel like all of a sudden the scales were turned. And we're like, oh, wait, this is something the good guys can't do?
Yeah.
So then Luke deciding to be good meant a little more, didn't it?
I do remember it being really scary that Luke got shot
Corey
with
has a memory.
all the
Excellent.
lightning. Yeah, you had to. It wasn't until you brought up the lightning because you said force choke. I think is what you asked. I don't remember the first force choke thing. That one just made sense to me, I guess, as a kid. But the lightning, that's in there. It's in there somewhere. I do remember that. It was scary, and I always thought like, you remember when Luke's like holding on to that round thing, and he almost like falls in the big hole because he's holding the round thing. I was like, I remember that freaked me out as a kid. It's like, quit leaning that way, bro. What are you doing? Like,
Dude, he acts the crap out of that.
He
scene. I mean,
does.
like, if you watch, he's just screaming.
I know,
in
and
agony.
the lightning on his teeth. You remember that? Like it's
Oh,
over his teeth or whatever. Yeah, like
I can feel it right now.
I know. Yeah, that like messed with me as a kid, man. It like screwed me up.
Yeah.
Father, please.
Have you guys ever wondered why, just speaking of the Force choke thing, why does Vader physically choke that one dude? Why does he
make
decide
it personal? That's what it's got to be.
Well, you mean you mean in the very beginning where he holds him up?
Yeah, I think what is it? That's Captain Antilles.
Captain Antilles, yeah.
He's like actually physically choking him. Like, did he really hate that dude, or was that like a nice way to choke and kill somebody? I don't know.
I mean,
man.
do we see Darth Vader force choke anybody else like in such close proximity ever though? Like he reaches across the table to
Krennic,
choke.
but that's way later.
Yeah. Still, he's not like right in front of him though. I mean, he did it while he's walking in the direction. Remember, right? So like,
yeah.
I mean, we
know.
could also use the classic excuse of
So he's
Lucas hadn't
lazy.
thought of it yet.
yeah, it's true.
Vader's just lazy.
That's
Oh
right.
God,
Yeah.
you're like outside of my arm's reach. I'm just gonna have to force choke you.
I have to do it. I don't want it. But I thought it was interesting that the original trilogy, I feel like with both sets of powers, we talked about this last week with the Jedi, the original trilogy focuses a little more on the might, right? Like of we're gonna choke, we're gonna do lightning. And then the prequels, we get to the prequels and it becomes a lot about, the dark side is clouding my vision. I'm feeling cold. Like, it's a lot more of an aura kind of thing. And it's interesting how the perception of the dark side, I feel like, goes that way in storytelling. It becomes like, we definitely get some cool powers, which we'll talk about a little later. But what do you guys think about the dark side as time goes on, becoming more of a cloud, becoming more of a feeling that kind of, tries to snuff out light?
Man, I don't even know what the Force is anymore. Like it's such like an untangible thing at this point. Like, it's gonna be cool it's already been cool to see how the Light of the Jedi has described the Force, because like we have a lot of sort of commentary on how different Jedi experience the Force, or just the Force in and of itself is so hard to say. Like, they talk about the dark side clouding everything in the prequel trilogy. What the hell does that even mean? Like, how does that work? How does it cloud everything? I don't know. It's still so confusing.
I think it's cool.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, Wes.
I just saying it's very elaborate in the prequel trilogy of how the dark side clouded everybody, all the Jedi's judgment, basically turning Anakin against the Jedi because he put that, or Palpatine put that in his mind about the only way that you can save Padme's life is by turning to the dark side. And then on top of all that, they built an army all because of the dark side clouding the judgment of the Jedi. And then you keep going down all these different paths of why everything happened in the prequel trilogy, and it was all because Palpatine's doing. He's crazy powerful with that. He's not even using anything to hurt somebody. He's just using it to change people's minds. It's just crazy.
Right.
Well, and I think that's one of the coolest things too about Star Wars, that it inverts the classic fantasy trope. Because I think in classical fantasy, it's the one brave knight against the forces of darkness, right? And it's like all the minions and evil people are coming upon this one hero that then has to fight back. Whereas in the prequels, it's only Palpatine. And he takes on the entire Jedi Council, the entire Jedi Order. So the numbers are actually in favor of light for once. And darkness still wins because of the way he works. And I think that's an interesting... that fascinated me as a kid, because especially when you brought up KOTOR earlier, Corey, that when you play the games and stuff, they really try to make it clear that raw power, you're going to be stronger with the dark.
Yeah.
That's the point.
The powers are always better on the dark side in the games.
Yes.
That's how it is.
Absolutely. And then we see things like the mind suggestion, or the mind touch, as they call it in Light of the Jedi. It becomes more and more of a dark force ability because you're twisting will and you're twisting things. And I wonder if you guys agree with this statement too. I would say that Star Wars makes evil seem like almost the most appetizing of any medium, because you can literally change the universe through the Force to the way you want it to make your life easier.
I do remember back when I was playing the Star Wars MMO when it first came out. I remember seeing at launch 60% of users were playing as dark side characters, and I was like, holy crap,
Really?
that's like fairly significantly more than half. Like, it was like, no, I think it was even higher than that at one point, up to like in the 70s if I remember correctly, like to the point that it was becoming a problem with the balance of the game, of like way too many people want to play as the bad guys, not the good guys. So
you know why though? Because that's every person out there who gets like halfway cut off in traffic and like just grits their teeth and waves them in, and then they get home and they log in as like the Sith trooper or whatever, like the Sith Inquisitor, I don't know what they were, and they just force choke the hell out of people that are supposed to represent that dude that cut them off.
That's right.
I totally buy that, but I do want to ask, because Wes, you wanted to kill people when you were a child, as you said, but I do want to say, when you guys start any kind of game like that, when there is a morality scale, do you go light or dark first playthrough?
I always
go light
go
every
light.
time.
I go dark.
I always go light.
I go dark.
I never even make a single dark side decision. Like, my bar has like gone from blue to white.
That somehow doesn't surprise me at all, Charles.
Hey, Wes. All right, well, there you go. You learned something about the living Force host, everyone.
What did you say, Eric?
Oh, light. I always do
go
light,
light?
and even like when I try to be better as I get older, to make a couple bad decisions just to make it interesting, like
I
in
try
Mass
to be
Effect.
better. I try to be a better, worse person.
Yeah, you know, like in the Mass Effect games, I'll do all the light general stuff, but every once in a while, I'll shoot a person if they're annoying me, just to like keep it fun.
It depends how impatient I am. How long I've been playing this day. If I've been playing for like 4 hours, I'm like, oh god, just give me the information I want, man. Like, then I'll just kill them, you know.
So, Mike, Eric, when you're playing Cyberpunk and you cut somebody off and they shout out, "Hey, I got friends," you're like, "Oh, what's that?" And you turn your car around and you go back. You got friends, and then you pull your shotgun out, you shoot him in the face. Is that kind of? Is that kind of your?
This is oddly specific.
If I have to get 3.2 kilometers away, I'm gonna hop a curb and kill someone if it's quicker. Like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Ish.
Oh my god.
But I do
That's
want to
funny.
ask you guys about, because speaking of gameplay, I think this is also a fun little transition to acknowledge the dark side of the Force. I think we can say is really expanded the most through games and books and comics, because the movies and TV shows are shown through the point of view of the light side. So the dark side are the enemies that we see.
Yeah.
Whereas in games, like we're talking Force Unleashed, we're talking Old Republic, things like that, and books especially, which I really want to dive into because we're the living Force. We get to see so much about the dark side. So I want to ask you guys off the bat, when you think of the dark side in the EU, regardless of medium, what's the first thing pops into your head? What does it mean to you?
Darth Bane.
Bane. Yeah, definitely
Thought
Bane.
bomb, bro. It's the thought bomb.
It is,
Come
man.
on.
It is. So I think
I think you said Bond for a second, like an asshole. Oh, you mean Darth Bond? Yes. Anyway, Corey, sorry.
Oh man, I think you're absolutely right. I think we saw the. I mean, you got to think about how the EU sort of progressed, right? And obviously, when we're talking about EU, we're talking about canon and legends, as we always say on the Living Force, but specifically legends came first, right? So, like, just production wise, as books were released, they told a lot of stories about characters like Luke, who were depicted as naturally having a lot of limitations, and that's the thing they do is they overcome that stuff, right? So, like there just wasn't a lot of epicness, I think, happening from the light side in books for the longest time, and I would go as far to say as like, in Light of the Jedi is maybe some of the first time we've seen hugely epic stuff happening in canon, and like at all from the light side.
There is a moment in Light of the Jedi, which I cannot wait to talk about in the round table, that made me like jump up and like it is those cinematic. I think epic is the exact right word for it.
They're really pushing the limits of what the Force can do in the light side.
Exactly, realizing that the light side of the Force isn't all about meditating. Sometimes you can just kick ass.
Right, and I think that's what I'm kind of getting at is like there was, because of this storytelling medium of what happened in the original trilogy, we start off with this overwhelmingly powerful evil, right? So like, and then you have Luke who has these limitations. They sort of set the story up to make it really epic for the dark side users. You know what I mean? Because Luke is the, he's like the climax of what you can be as a Jedi, as so far in the storytelling. But we have the Emperor, who's this crazy, scary dude that can shoot lightning out of his fingers, and so it was really easy to go back and tell stories like Darth Bane. And let's talk about Darth Bane for a minute. Holy crap, Darth Bane trilogy. I think paved the way. I sent you guys this link of some of the listed dark side powers from Wikipedia earlier, and like I pulled up like 3 or 4 just while we're chatting here, and all of them have Darth Bane listed in the references section. So like, I mean that trilogy was key for really paving the way for pushing the limits of what the dark side can do. Absolutely.
That trilogy is a great example of the progression of the dark side, of how you just used anger to help fuel your rage and your power, and all the way up to trying to pass on his essence to somebody else. So is a really good example.
It's a great word for that too, Wes, is that progression. Because I think why Bane is so successful is that it was a trilogy that was clearly meant as a trilogy from go. And it told the story of a person it's not a kid trying to find their way in the world. It's like an adult that discovers a truth and discovers this secret side of the world kind of that he never knew before, and becomes the epic master of it by turning it all on its head and discovering just the depths of depravity and destruction along the way. I mean, some of these, when we were talking about doing this episode first, the first thing I thought of was the like Force storm of lightning that Bane had in a fight with a bunch of Jedi. I think it's in the second book. I think it's in Rule of Two.
The Force storm? That's in the first one. It's in the first one.
In the first,
God.
Yeah.
I read this like last year, I think. Yeah. It's in the first one.
The training one is in the when he does it in the basement
at the Sith temple or whatever. Yeah.
Best cover of the 3.
Business.
Yeah.
That's not hard. That's not hard, Wes.
Yeah. But he just does these incredible feats, and the way Drew Karpyshyn writes it is obviously, I think, more to blame for all this greatness. Like, he just writes how much raw energy it takes, and even though they're just words on a page, I feel like you can feel how strong Bane is, and he's reaching into the universe and telling it what to do.
And like, I think the dark side is sort of set up nicely to to be told in the way that it happens in Bane's story is he finds and seeks out these ancient texts with these Sith rituals, and like it's all very I don't know, alchemic maybe. Like there's just a lot of there's this epic sort of nature to the evil of what was from the past, right? And he continually and it also highlights like the nature of the dark side and the cruelty of it. Just how people are. Like the one scene that totally sticks with me more than anything is that horrible scene where he's like trying to survive in the desert, trying to get from point A to point B, and he comes across that dad and his kids, and he slaughters them all, and like he like kills the kid in front of the dad and stuff, and makes him watch and feast on like the
fear,
and the pain. It's just like, good God, this is like so over the top. They really push the limits with that stuff.
I mean, some would say horrible, some would say survival. It's survival.
Satisfying. I mean, whatever.
Some would say inspiring,
entertaining.
Yeah. And I think we could do episodes upon episodes on Bane, and I'm sure tune into Legends Look Back, but. I do also want to kind of expand beyond it because Bane, like you said, set the groundwork, I think, for where the Force could go. And then we kind of went nuts, I think. Just as we said, Legends
over the top.
Legends, they took the Jedi and like, well, we always have to be stronger than the Sith. So we got to make a Jedi thing that's stronger than the thought bomb, I guess. Yeah. And we got like, but the darkness had to grow with it. So I want to highlight some of our most fearsome dark side both users and dark side powers from Legends. I know that Corey, you had us bring up this document here, and I think the number one thing when I think of the most powerful, ridiculous OP, so that's why they had to restart Star Wars power, is the fact that the dark side can legit just eat planets.
Yeah, yes. I was hoping you were going to bring that up.
This was the Sith equivalent of the hold my beer moment.
Yes,
like
it was.
Exactly.
Isn't that in it's in a book? What is it in a book? It's not the Bane books, I don't think, is it? Where like there's this. I specifically remember this scene where somebody takes a character to a planet and everything is dead. I think it is the Bane books, actually.
I think it's either Bane or Revan. I'm not sure which
one
it is.
Maybe it is Revan. Spiced says it's in Revan. He usually knows the stuff.
Yeah,
so
I think it's Revan.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
like
then,
it's just like the Emperor when the Emperor like he like sucks the life out of the planet, and they go there and there's nothing there. There's no life. There's no sensation. There's no feeling or emotion. It's just emptiness, and it's just like
distractions. It's quiet. It's nice.
Get the hell out west. Jesus Christ.
I mean, honestly, once they opened the door with the phrase Sith ritual, you could do whatever the hell you wanted.
I know. Yeah.
You know?
And that first, I don't know what emperor that was, like the first emperor. I don't know what the guy's name was, but he was like the most ridiculously overpowered person ever. And like to the point that they couldn't even properly tell his story because it's just so ridiculously done. Like we get a little bit of him in the KOTOR games because Revan and Malak like go out to the beyond and they find him and stuff, and they come back as like Sith leaders, right? And and we learn a little bit about his character in the MMO, and it's nuts. It's crazy. Spiceness says Darth Vitiate or Vitiate or something like that.
Yeah, that's right. That's the one.
I think it's Vitiate.
I read that today.
Yeah. That's the Emperor, right? It's the Sith Vitiate or something like Darth Vitiate or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. It gets to the point where the powers become so extreme.
Yeah.
That
it's like not fun anymore, honestly. Like it's like please stop creating planet killing weapons in Star Wars.
It's a game genie. It's a dark side game genie.
It is.
Wow, I love that. Now, on the other side of the game genie, though, Corey, you did ask us this before the show, and I wanna jump into this because you did send us all these force powers, and there are a bunch of them. Again, we've weirdly promoted Wikipedia a ton of times in this episode, but Wikipedia is, I would say, the greatest fan creation in the history of fandom media. So head over there. You got an afternoon. Check out the dark side force powers, but let's go around and check out some of our favorites here. Wes, you are clearly the most evil out of all of us. So which one of these force powers really kind of stole your heart? And we'll kind of go down where our listeners can find out about them.
Okay, so this one is called Eternal Hatred. So Eternal Hatred.
That's the middle band I was in 8th grade.
Dark side power, Eternal Hatred is a force power used by Darth Sion
Oh,
during
yeah,
the
that
time of
guy.
the Old Republic. It allowed him to use the dark side force to focus his anger to survive injuries that would normally kill him. But on numerous occasions, he left his body in a heavily scarred state. That's awesome. You could see the battles you've been through, but you get to restore yourself by hating people. That's not great. That's not great.
It sounds a bit like Maul in Clone Wars, doesn't it? Like
Pretty
much.
that's how
Guy.
he kind of just that's how
Look
he
at this
describes.
guy.
You remember this guy? He was in the first coach,
God.
the second KOTOR game. This guy
Second
was so
KOTOR.
scary. I remember that because I played that as a kid, and it was like, it was kind of traumatizing, honestly. That guy was so freaking scary. When he's just like in the hallway looking at you
my
from a
God.
distance and
Yes.
in the low
Yeah.
lights, like that was a very scary scene in that game.
That's the cutout you need, Charles. You need that cutout.
I don't need that. I don't need that behind me.
Oh my god!
I just pictured Wes stubbing his toe in real life and then trying to use eternal hatred to leave his scarred body.
Everybody usually just screams, and I just sit there in complete silence, just shaking
fuming.
and turning red.
That being said, though, there is a little bit of, and I always love finding the real world like things in Star Wars, right? Where if you get super angry when you're hurt, it does alleviate pain, like mentally, right? You can like fool yourself into thinking you're not hurt as much by like screaming. Isn't that a thing? I feel like that's medicinal.
I do that
Yeah,
every
I think
day
it
on
curse.
my way to work.
There are genuinely studies. There are genuinely studies that show that cursing after you injure yourself makes the pain less.
Yeah, that's why I
love
do
it.
it.
Factual.
Part
History
of
of
those
swear words on
studies.
Netflix. Check it out. So Wes, Eternal Hatred, a great one, and KOTOR 2. So following that craziness, if you want to see more of that, Knights of the Old Republic 2, older game. I think it's coming to actually like iOS and stuff soon, so you can play it on your phone.
Are they finally adding the second one to iOS? I haven't seen that. That's pretty
I
rad.
saw an announcement they were going to do it. I don't know if there's a release date, but they
Okay.
definitely should.
Crazy.
Charles, what about you? You,
All
Mr.
right.
Like, I can't hurt a fly in my Mass Effect game.
So that being said, I'm going to choose one that I think might be the most evil of any of them in like okay, you guys tell me what you think.
It's
I'm-
capitalism, isn't it?
it's capitalism. I'm choosing the memory walk, and it's something that we don't see often at all, even within Legends. It actually first came out in. So you remember Rob Neese, he was talking about the Brian Daley Han Solo trilogy. Its like counterpart was L. Neil Smith's Lando Calrissian trilogy. And
Right.
it actually first appeared in one of those, in the Flame Wind of Ocean. But then it was also in the Legacy comics later on with Cade Skywalker. And you basically just get inside your enemy's head and you make them relive all of their absolute worst moments like endlessly.
Ugh.
Is that
yeah.
not just
Oh,
horrific?
God.
Wes
That's
is
the
way
worst
too
thing I could
entertained
think.
by this. I'm like not.
I imagine continuously living your most embarrassing, painful, and terrifying experiences.
Exactly.
No.
to the point where it almost seemed to cause physical pain. Is the rest of that sentence?
Jeez. So, and you said, so that's the L. Neil Smith, Lando Calrissian adventures in the Legacy comics.
Yes, that's the only places that we see it in all of Legends.
That's
Wow.
crazy.
Here, I'll go next, and I'll let Corey let you bring us home here. I want to talk about something that a lot of people may not know is a dark side power, and that is the Force Bond, which people may remember most famously from Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker, the bond that Rey and Kylo share. This is actually a dark side ability, which allows people to communicate between the Force visually and emotionally. And they say a big part of it is having it be used to manipulate people based on your voices and actions, which can also be seen in Star Wars Rebels between Ezra Bridger and Maul. Maul tricks Ezra into thinking that he's around all the time, which kind of drives him a little crazy, uses an influence to make him think certain things. And I just really wanted to bring this one up because it's an interesting look at obviously a power that has been very widely talked about because of Last Jedi. But I think it's really interesting that something that is about connecting people is of the dark side.
It
Because
is very interesting. I
Yeah.
never
Inherently-
made that connection either. Like
Yeah.
in the second KOTOR game, you have that sort of bond with the witch lady, Kreia.
Yeah.
And,
Yep.
That's kind of like that.
And they can lie to you. They
the
straight
Wookiee-
up can.
The Wikipedia article is pretty interesting. It said Quinlan Voss and Ayla Secura had one at one point as Padawans in Legends. It's pretty interesting.
So those Legends comics.
Yeah.
So there are a ton of appearances in this. Most recently, in Light of the Jedi, it is mentioned in Master and Apprentice. It's in obviously all the Last Jedi material, all the comics, things like that. But that is one I wanted to bring up just because I think it's pretty popular, and we might think it's all good, but you know, the Jedi say connection leads to the dark side, right? So this is canon knowledge, and if you pick up I think it's not the Book of the Sith, but the Jedi Code. I think the Jedi Code. That's the other one. They talk about it in there. So
Interesting.
Force bond.
So in the Rise of Skywalker, is Kylo the one that's doing the Force bond the whole time, creating it after? I mean, because Palpatine already said he bridged their minds.
Well, I think that's a great question because I think as far as we're led to believe, like Palpatine created it, so out of dark side energy, because that's what he uses, right? So once it's created, it can probably be used by light and dark, but I think that the bond itself is of the dark side.
Interesting.
Which I find very interesting. Corey, bring us home with some horrors that'll make Wes giggle like a school child.
I have two of them. I have two of them. The first one is just freaking scary. Look at this picture too. Hold on, I gotta switch it over here. The Force Rend. This is a Force ability that enabled Force users to telekinetically lift and violently contort another individual. This is like bloodbending from Avatar: Last Airbender.
God.
Like, that is horrible, right? Like, can you imagine Darth Vader not just like choking them, but like, you know, holding him up and like breaking his spine backwards? Like, what the heck? That is sick.
It's a little bit of like what we see in Rogue One when he just throws them up onto the ceiling, but he does do it like the fist like clench. You can tell he does something.
Right. Yeah. So
Love that.
Mortal Kombat.
That one's crazy. And the other one is the one that I sent you guys earlier, which kind of made me laugh. It's called Deadly Sight. And it says by channeling this ability, a Force user harnessed fury and hatred and then projected them through an intense glare onto the victim. As long as that victim was in the practitioner's range of vision, the deadly sight would have then blistered the skin and vaporized extremities, which is freaking crazy. Like, I hate you so much, I just look at you and your arms blow off. Like, what the hell?
Dangerous in the wrong hands.
Do you want to tell us the context behind that, Corey?
I said I told I told the guys here that it's what Caitlin does to me when I refuse to take the dogs out in the middle of the night. Deadly Sight.
Which you do deserve. I also want to call out Spiced in the chat says, for ridiculous dark side powers, I nominate the Legends Force Scream. For the confrontation of Mace Windu with Sidious, it's described as a bestial Sith war cry. So
that's what he does whenever he leaps over the desk, right?
Yeah, when he goes,
Yeah.
It's funny.
That's awesome. And there's just so many cool dark side powers. And I think as we kind of wrap up this segment, I think the key is that, and tell me if I'm wrong here, guys, the dark side is at its best when it's fun, when it's a little more powerful, because, you know, we need to have that moral conundrum, but there is a limit.
Yeah, it's defeatable. It has to be defeatable, you know, and I think that's the key.
You gotta teach kids that it's powerful to defeat darkness.
Yeah, unlike the Geonosis level, that one cannot be defeated.
That's pure darkness.
That's pure
planet
darkness.
killer.
Oh my god!
And before we talk about a couple other things we got going on in UTini and get on out of here, I do want to mention, speaking of being able to defeat darkness, this is gonna be a weird segue, but. But next week's show, actually, I want to give a little preview because we don't really do that a whole lot. We don't get you guys into our planning process. But next week's show is actually going to be a show similar to one we did last year. We did a show called State of the Fandom, where we talked about kind of how the Star Wars community is doing, how different narratives are rising to the top, if everyone's kind of okay, if there's too much anger, if there's too much whatever. And in the last few months, especially, we've noticed some things both internally and externally, frankly, that have been hard in this community. And next week, we're going to just have a nice conversation amongst ourselves about things we can do to put as much light into this fandom while also maintaining accountability, but also not losing ourselves in the process. And I think it's a conversation that a lot of people are trying to have nowadays, and it's a hard one. And it is one, though, that we thought was pretty important to just kind of address in this first month of a new year with a lot of new changes. Before we dive into a truly wonderful roundtable discussion, I think it'll be something nice to just kind of get our thoughts on. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to let everyone know that that's coming, and it's going to be a little different show next week, right, guys?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, so we will be here next Monday night, of course, to talk all about that. There will still be fun. There will still be shenanigans. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, I think we really just want to kind of have an intellectual discussion on like what's the best way to be a Star Wars fan, because like we talk about that a lot. Like we have our code that we play at the end of every episode and stuff, and it's like, what does it mean to be positive in the fandom? Are you allowed to be critical? Like where do you draw the line? And I think that's a discussion that more people should be having. I think is when does criticism become a problem, right? When does crapping on something become a problem? When is it okay to do that at all? I don't know. I think it's a fun sort of thought experiment to sort of have, and you guys know what we think about like kind of being positive and stuff. But I think sometimes we lose sight of that a little bit, and I think it's important to sort of try to reset and re-understand exactly what it is. It's like defining morality in a lot of ways. So I think that's what we need to do.
And we are absolutely fallible, and I think that we are four really good friends that love talking Star Wars every week. And we run a company that loves cranking out a bunch of Star Wars content, but we get stuff wrong. We will continue to do that, and a lot of people will. And I think we just want to have a frank conversation because you all trust us with your airspace. You trust us with an hour or so out of your week. So if you haven't been able to have a conversation with some of your friends, hopefully our talks can maybe help that out a little bit. But that is next week. Until then, we want to let you know that we still got a ton of stuff coming your way to make you happy, to lift your days. We got the Star Wars Archives, just dropped a new episode today with Birthday Boy Joxy. I'm going to keep plugging that, where they talked all about Kylo Ren, as a matter of fact. So if you want more dark side knowledge, definitely head over there. Wes, Utini Game Night. We skipped last week, I believe. What's the deal? What's next? What's the schedule looking like?
This week, Andrew is going to pick up his conquest of Jedi Outcast. So he started a Jedi Outcast about a month ago. He played a good 2 or 3 hours, and then so he's going to pick up from where he left off. We're going to get some good footage off of that and throw it up on the Twitter and our social media channels. So you be sure to look for that. He's going to do that on Wednesday around 7 p.m. 7 p.m. Eastern time. I'm gonna get that switched up.
Well, that's fair.
But I think we're gonna start moving Utini Game Nights to every other week, so get more make you want it a little more when it comes up.
Ooh, that's good. That's good. And you know what you also want, if you haven't yet, you want to see Andrew Bell's mustache as he plays video games. I don't know if you have tuned in. That is something key. We also want to shout out the Legends Look Back crew, who are in the middle of their Knights of the Old Republic Roundtable series, and did a live tweet-a-thon today with John Jackson Miller, the writer of so much Knights of the Old Republic content. He did an AMA on Reddit. Corey, that is your book database. There we go. John Jackson Miller did an AMA today, and the Legends Look Back crew live tweeted it, and he tweeted them back. So if you want to hear more about John Jackson Miller's creative process, head over to the Legends Look Back Twitter, where they covered it in a beautifully comprehensive way. Really proud of them. Of course, Meg, who did all that, is also the host of Cat Faves, which is coming out every other week. The Conj Book Club is going every Saturday, talking about Light of the Jedi. Check that out. Charlie and I got the Ghost Crew coming out every other week. There's just a lot of great stuff. And I'm really, really thankful for all y'all that are listening. There's going to be Patreon surveys coming your way to see what we can do for you better in those ways. But on that note of darkness, hatred, and depravity, that is going to do it for this week's episode of The Living Force. If you're already supporting us on Patreon, head on over to Discord and join our Aftermath After Show video channel to hang out for our after party for just a hot minute. A special thank you, as always, goes to Cheryl Bell, Patrick Ortiz, and Carl Sander on our Jedi High Council, Kyle Hickman, Elizabeth Cloutier, Freddie C., and Sally and Chris Eilerson on our Alliance High Command for their amazing support. You can find us on Twitter at Eric Eilerson, Doc Star Wars MD, at C Hankel, and at Boss Wes. A special thank you goes out to Matt Davenport, our amazing editor, Ryan, our graphic designer extraordinaire, and Wes, you producer and community manager, you. Thank you to Corey, Charles, and Wes for podcasting with me tonight. Thanks to all of you for watching and listening. And as always, may the force be with you.